All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cook Inlet Belugapalooza Live. Thanks so much to everybody for taking time out of your Saturday to join us to learn about the fascinating research happening right now to help Alaska's critically endangered Cook Inlet belugas recover from the brink of extinction. I'm your host, Suzanne Steinert, Beluga Whale Alliance's founder and president, along with Jen Christofferson of Defenders of Wildlife Alaska. Beluga Whale Alliance is a 501c3 nonprofit based in Cook Inlet, Alaska, dedicated to the local and global conservation of beluga whales. Our main priority in our home region of Cook Inlet is supporting the recovery of our critically endangered Cook Inlet belugas. Jen, I'll pass it over to you now to introduce yourself, Defenders of Wildlife, and tell folks more about our Cook Inlet belugas and Cook Inlet Belugapalooza.
Thanks, Suzanne. So my name is Jen Christofferson, and I am the Outreach Coordinator for Defenders of Wildlife in the Alaska program. And we are a national nonprofit organization that is dedicated to the protection of all native animals and plants in their natural communities. So in Alaska, we focus mainly on endangered species such as polar bears and Cook Inlet beluga whales. There are only 279 Cook Inlet beluga whales estimated left in the wild here, which is one of the reasons why we are holding this event today, to raise awareness and celebrate these magnificent creatures. And so this is our second annual spring Belugapalooza, and it is highlighting the return of the belugas.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Jen. We very much value the important work you guys at Defenders do to support belugas here in Cook Inlet and around Alaska, and love co-hosting this exciting and evolving new event with your organization. I know we're both incredibly excited today to be here with guest speakers from NOAA Fisheries and Mystic Aquarium to highlight for our audiences the wide variety of research being done not only in the field, but in aquaria and beyond to support Cook Inlet beluga recovery.
Agreed. So before we introduce our presenters, I want to acknowledge that Cook Inlet and the research that takes place here occurs on the traditional lands of the Alaska Native Dena'ina people who have coexisted closely with belugas for thousands of years. It is important to recognize the role Alaska Native people play in the conservation of our belugas and their future survival.
Thanks so much, Jen. Yes, definitely. Recognizing the relationship of Alaska Native people with beluga whales, past, present, and going forward into the future, making sure their voices and values are heard in beluga conservation is incredibly important. Now, we'll go ahead and introduce our presenters. So today we have with us Dr. Paul Wade will be kicking things off. He is a lead beluga researcher with NOAA Fisheries based in Seattle, Washington at the National Marine Mammal Lab. He also has chaired the research subcommittee of the Cook Inlet Beluga Whale Recovery Implementation Task Force. And he's going to be presenting on the wide variety of research that's currently happening in general to support Cook Inlet beluga recovery. He is the go-to guy for Cook Inlet beluga research. Trust us. We're super excited, and he's going to be introducing as well briefly the new faces of Cook Inlet beluga recovery for NOAA Fisheries. Dr. Jill Seymour, who's the new Cook Inlet Beluga Recovery Coordinator, and Dr. Jenna Malik, who is the new 2021 Belugas Count Coordinator. So thank you guys so much in NOAA Fisheries for being here and supporting this event. And then after that, we'll be transitioning to the East Coast, where our guest speakers from Mystic Aquarium will be joining us today. So those speakers are Dr. Tracy Romano, who's Mystic's chief scientist and research scientist, Dr. Ebru Unal. As Mystic's Vice President of Biological Research, Dr. Romano serves on multiple scientific advisory panels and has spearheaded a renowned cultural exchange program at Mystic with Native American youth, leading over 15 field expeditions in the Arctic. Dr. Unal hails from Turkey originally and currently leads Mystic's beluga whale research, including a molecular study to better understand the physical impacts of environmental stressors on cetaceans like belugas. So joining Drs. Romano and Unal as well is Elizabeth Krakow, a marine mammal trainer at Mystic, and also BWA's newest team member and Beluga Whiz volunteer. And Liz works daily with Mystic's beluga whales including her favorite beluga, shh, don't tell the others, Juno. And we are all so excited that Juno the beluga whale is going to be joining us here today, along with trainer Jesse Saletti. Juno is a fan favorite, full-grown beluga weighing 2,500 pounds, who arrived at Mystic in 2010 from Marineland in Canada. He loves to interact with Aquarium guests and is an integral part of Mystic's research program. He's been trained to help with research behaviors like collecting blow specimens and is actually being currently trained to mimic sounds. So as the largest beluga at Mystic, his distinctive white color and small gray patches on his melon set him apart. And I'm personally so excited to see Juno again after meeting him at Mystic Aquarium in 2019 during the International Conference on Beluga Whale Research and Conservation. And really, that was my first time getting to meet an actual beluga after seeing them only in the wild during doing our field work. It was so incredible to get to meet a real live beluga up close and really experience firsthand how intelligent and full of personality these animals are. So thank you so much to the bottom of the deep blue sea and back to all of these guest speakers for being here today to highlight and connect people to the research that's taking place and what you guys are doing to help our Cook Inlet belugas survive. Now we'll go ahead and dive in with our first guest speaker of the afternoon, Dr. Paul Wade. Dr. Wade is NOAA Fisheries lead beluga researcher based at the National Marine Mammal Lab in Seattle, as I mentioned. He also chairs the research subcommittee of the task force and personally spearheads a lot of fascinating field work for NOAA, like drone photogrammetry out there in the field. And he's here today to give us a rundown of the wide variety of research that's currently being conducted to support federal Cook Inlet beluga recovery actions, specifically highlighting what's new and how that research is being used to recover this very unique population of whales. So also, as I mentioned, be introducing the newest faces of Cook Inlet beluga recovery for NOAA. So go ahead and take it away, Paul. Love your beluga shirt.
Thank you, Suzanne. Okay, great. Yeah, first off, thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here to talk about Cook Inlet beluga whales. But first, yeah, Marina Gill in the past, I work at the Science Center and head up the science side of NOAA's work on Cook Inlet belugas, but we partner closely with the Alaska the regional office, NIMS regional office in Alaska. And in the past few years, Marina Gill has been both the Cook Inlet beluga recovery coordinator, and she's also organized the beluga count outreach that goes on in September of every year. But she got promoted, so she's turned those over to some new people. We have Jill Seymour, who's taken over as the Cook Inlet beluga recovery coordinator. So I'll be continuing to work closely with Marina and, but now Jill as well. And then also Jenna Malik has taken over to be the coordinator for the Belugas Count event that is going to be a virtual event next September. All right. With that, I'll launch into talking about new research we've been doing on Cook Inlet beluga. And one thing that's allowed us to do a lot of new research is that our headquarters office named Cook Inlet beluga as one of our species in the spotlight, 9 species highlighted nationally at being at great risk of extinction. And it's provided some new funding that's allowed us to do some new projects. So let me get going on that. All right, well, we've been flying aerial surveys since 1994 to estimate the abundance of Cook Inlet beluga and also to look at their trends. And our last survey that we did was in 2018. We unfortunately had to cancel the 2020 survey because of COVID. But when we started the surveys in 94, you can see in the plot there, we caught the big decline that happened from overhunting of Cook Inlet beluga, which stopped around the year 2000. And you can see with our revised trend data, we've got a better look at the trend through time. And it looks like the population was starting to increase in the 2000s. But since 2010, has taken a turn for the worse and started declining again, which is of great concern to us. And we're trying to do a lot of research to figure out what's going on and why that's happening. So as Suzanne mentioned, one project I started in 2017 was to do drone-based photogrammetry. Photogrammetry just means being able to measure things through a photograph. And so we go out in a boat, as you can see in the upper left, and put up this drone that takes these nice high-resolution photos. And one thing we're doing is measuring the relative length of the whale here with the arrows. You can see the distance from the blowhole to the start of the dorsal ridge. And one of the main things we're doing with that, as you can see on the left, that's a neonatal calf, meaning a calf that was just born within a few weeks of when this photo was taken. And you can tell that by these lines on the side of the calf that are called fetal folds that they get from being all folded up inside of their mother before they're born. The calf on the right, from its more bluish gray color and some other distinguishing features, is what we think is a yearling calf. And we've been able to measure these, and you can see the calf on the left, these neonates, they average about 58 centimeters, and the yearlings average nearly 80 centimeters. And they don't have any overlap in length, because about 10 months goes by between when we're photographing a neonate and photographing a yearling. So just by measuring the whales, we can make sure that we're identifying which ones are the neonates, the newborn calves of the year. And in that way, we can try and estimate how many calves are being produced each year and see if, one, are they producing enough calves to allow the population to recover, but also over time, when we do this for enough years, we'll be able to correlate how many calves get produced with things like how much salmon there were the previous year to get an idea of what are some of the things that are impacting the population. These photos we get from the drone are also high resolution enough that we can do photo ID from them and identify individuals from scratches and other markings on the whales. What I'm showing you here are at the top are 4 of the raw uncropped photos that we get from the drone. That's what they look like. But then we've cropped in and zoomed in, and this is 4 examples of a picture of the same whale. You can see I've identified in particular these 2 diagonal scratches here that you can see are the same in each photo. So we're able to use these drone photos for photo ID, and this is great because there's been an ongoing photo ID project run by Dr. Tamara McGuire, taking ID photographs from boats. And so we're trying to link our overhead photos with these oblique photos that you can get from a boat. And here's an example of some notches in the dorsal ridge and scratches in front of the dorsal ridge that allow us to match this oblique photo with the overhead photo we get in the drone. So we know this is the same individual. And we're always looking for new technology to help us out. And so one thing we've just launched into is an artificial intelligence machine learning project to help us with our photo ID processing and matching. We've partnered with Jason Holmberg at Wild Me. They're the ones that have this fluke book platform that some of you may have heard of. And they've been doing this kind of work with other species, but we've now started a new project with Cook Inlet Beluga, and we've passed nearly 4,000 identification photographs to them recently, and they've been putting it through their auto detector system where it will automatically find a whale on a photo, put a box around it to crop it, and add some data to it to organize it. And then the next step we'll be going into is to run one of these, what they call challenge competitions, where a bunch of computer programmers have a contest to see who can do the best at automating matching of photographs between individuals. This has worked really successfully in species like right whales and humpback whales, and we're hoping we can do it with beluga whales too. All right. Another kind of high-tech thing we're doing, and it's something that Kim Getz in our group is taking the lead on, is that we have gained access to these very high-resolution satellite images that come off the WorldView 3 satellite. NOAA has set up an agreement with them so we can access some photos. And Kim's just in the very beginning stages of doing this, but they're similarly going to be looking for doing some artificial intelligence to help process photos. But what you're seeing here, the photo on the left, that is the entrance to Kinnick Arm and the city of Anchorage. And the red box there is an area by the port of Anchorage. And then it's been zoomed in there, and you can see on the photo on the right some of the barges at the port. And then those white dots in the red circles are, we're fairly certain, are beluga whales. So we're looking at this as a way of being able to use these photographs to look at the year-round distribution of the whales, because we mostly only have information about their distribution from late spring and summer, and we'd like to monitor where they are all year long. We do fly some aerial surveys in the late fall and early spring for that purpose, but these satellite images might give us a more year-round look at where the whales are. So we're excited about that might help us out too. And then now I want to run through some papers we published in the last year with some new results that we think are very interesting. interesting for trying to figure out what's going on with Cook Inlet belugas. One, our colleague Amy Van Cise published a paper on the skin microbiomes of beluga whales and compared Cook Inlet to Bristol Bay, which is a fairly healthy population, we think. The microbiome is nothing more than just the bacteria and viruses that live on the skin of the whales. And some of the interesting results that she found in this paper we published in the fall was that the skin microbiomes differ very dramatically between Bristol Bay and Cook Inlet. They don't have a shared microbiome, and that's something that we see in other cetacean species like humpbacks, that humpbacks worldwide, they all share some of the same bacteria and viruses. One thing that's been seen in other species like humpbacks is that the skin microbiome changes in an animal that's sick. And one thing we were able to look at here that Amy looked at was in the Bristol Bay animals, they were categorized as animals that were healthy or ones that had skin lesions or dermatitis. And Amy did find that the microbes on the skin varied between those healthy individuals and then the ones with skin lesions. And we do see a lot of whales in the Cook Inlet beluga population with skin lesions. So it's giving us some insights into what's going on in the population that way. Another thing we're really excited about, kind of cutting edge genomics work, is that we just recently published a paper that was led by Eleanor Bors from Oregon State University that produced an epigenetic clock that allows us to estimate the age of living beluga whales. This is a really emerging field, and this is one of the first applications to an endangered species of these techniques. And I wanted to tell you just a little bit about it, just because it does seem so cool to me. Previously, the only way we could age a mammal like a beluga whale is through their tooth. They put down annual growth layer groups that you can see in the teeth. So it's much like counting the rings on a tree, and that's the only way we had to age a whale. So in general, we were only able to estimate the age of our beluga whales after they were dead from the stranded carcass where we could get access to the tooth. But this now gives us the ability to estimate the age of a living whale just by collecting a skin biopsy sample from the whale. The way this works is through these epigenetic techniques. Now, epi means upon, so all epigenetics means is things that are on the DNA. And in this case, what we're using is there's a molecule called a methyl group, which is just one carbon and 3 hydrogen atoms. And these methyl groups attach to the outside of the DNA molecule. You know, that's the ATCG base pairs that you probably remember from high school biology. And what we do is through cutting edge genomics techniques, we find sites in the genome where the percentage of methylation is correlated with age. So that's where there's a lot of methyl groups attached at a particular site, and it's correlated with age in the whale. And we were able to calibrate this epigenetic clock with 69 paired samples of tissue and teeth from the same strand carcasses. So we got the age of the animal from counting the growth layer groups in the teeth, and then we put it together with the genetics from the tissue. And then now we have a model that allows us to predict the age of whales using the percent methylation measured in the skin of the animal using genomics. And this is an example of what we get out of it. We were able to estimate the age of 38 Cook Inlet beluga whales that we biopsy sampled from 2016 to 2018. And we're going to make this a routine thing on our biopsy project, that as we go forward, we'll estimate the age of whales. And this is the histogram of ages that we got. And we're biased to older animals because we do not biopsy sample the youngest whales. But just to give you a visual representation, this was the youngest estimated age in our sample, which is it's a dark gray small whale. Belugas, as you probably know, are dark gray when they're born, and they become white as they become physically mature. And then this is a photograph of the oldest whale estimated age in our sample. So these are actual photographs of the whales that we biopsy sampled, and you can see that's estimated to be a 28-year-old whale, and it's now a big white animal as compared to this dark gray young juvenile whale. So we're excited to be able to estimate the age of the whales, and what can that give us? Well, just one little example here. We're taking the ages from our epigenetic clock, and then we're pairing it with data from another study we're doing. We're working with Nick Keller, who's down at our Southwest Fisheries Science Center lab in San Diego. And he's been using hormones measured from blubber samples to do a variety of things. And one of the most important is to measure progesterone that can tell you whether a whale, or any mammal for that matter, is pregnant or not. And we get a blubber sample from these biopsy samples as well. And then this is what it looks like when we've, for example, in this graph here, the dots there are the progesterone level plotted against age. And the red line I put on there, any dot that falls above that is an animal that's pregnant, and the ones that are below that are not pregnant. And it's not a very large sample. Whoops, sorry, I'll go back. But you can see there's only 4 dots there above the line. So they're in this sample of 15 whales in our initial sample of females. 4 of them were pregnant. But the interesting thing that jumped out is that when we did it by age, you can see that it's really only the oldest whales in our sample that are pregnant at a high rate. From age 10 to 20 that I've highlighted there with the blue bar, only 1 out of the 10 whales was estimated to be pregnant. This is quite a contrast from other beluga populations we've seen. For example, Robert Sudan published his work on the eastern Chukchi beluga population, and in that study, 40% of the whales from age 10 to 20 were pregnant. So this is a very small sample size, so we need to keep doing this work to see if this is a real result. But if it continues to hold up this way, it suggests that our Cook Inlet beluga whales really have a delayed time to the age of first reproduction. And that's something that we know that happens to populations that are struggling, that are perhaps food limited, not getting enough food. So it is of a concern to us that we're starting to see these kind of signals. All right, and I wanted to mention that we are doing a collaboration with Tracy Romano and Ibru Unal, who you just met. They've already done some work looking at Bristol Bay belugas and comparing them to Eastern Chukchi sea belugas, and using another cool genomics technique called RNA transcriptomics. And it can be used to look at what genes are actually being expressed in an individual, what genes are being turned on. And I don't have time to get into the details, but one thing they can look at is whether some genes that are a response to stress in an animal have been turned on. And they did find differences between Bristol Bay and Eastern Chukchi. And they now have our samples from Cook Inlet beluga whales, and they're going to be looking at this in Cook Inlet as well. And we're really looking forward to seeing what kind of results they get out of that. And so the last thing I was going to do and just wrap up was to play some fun sounds for you. When I got out on the water with Cook Inlet beluga whales, everyone may have heard that they make a lot of really cool sounds underwater, but it turns out they also make really cool sounds out of the water, kind of a trumpeting sound out of their blowhole. And I'll just play 3 of them here for you because they're just fun and they always make me laugh. There you go. So that's what the sound of Cook Inlet belugas are when we're out there in a small boat on the water with them. And that's all I've got for you today. And thank you very much for letting me talk to you about our new research.
Thanks, Paul. That was some really great information.
Do I stop the sharing or do you guys do that?
Yeah, you can stop the sharing there. It looks like it stopped. Thanks.
Right.
So we do have like 1 or 2 questions that we wanted to ask that people were wondering. So the first question is there any connection between water temperature and the decline of the belugas?
All right, I did turn my camera back on. It always seems to shut off. There it comes.
There you go.
The one thing that we've been worried about is not necessarily the temperature of the water in the inlet itself, but the temperature in the rivers that come into the inlet. The belugas in summer are really focusing on eating as their prey fish that come into the rivers of the inlet, including hooligan, kind of a smelt species in the spring, but then salmon species like Chinook and chum and coho salmon. And there's been some papers published that are kind of concerning that because of climate change, the temperature of the water in the rivers is getting warmer, and it's getting to the point where it causes heat stress to the salmon, and it may be leading to a decline in some of the salmon runs. There's been a lot of publicity about the fact that Chinook salmon runs and Cook Inlet have been declining over time, and so that is a really good focus.
Thanks. Yeah, that's something definitely we follow up here in Alaska. We had another question. What could delay first reproduction? Kind of, if you can repeat what you said earlier about seeing some of this in other smaller populations.
Yeah, it's something that we know is true for all mammal species. You know, you have to grow to physical maturity before you can start having babies, and you have to be in good condition. You know, if you're not in good body condition, you just cannot produce a baby and go through a pregnancy and nursing, which is really nutritionally demanding. And so what happens is that if you know, the populations, if animals are not doing well, it just takes them longer to get to become fully physically mature and be in good enough body condition to start being pregnant and going through nursing. So it just takes them longer, so they're at an older age when they first start reproducing. And it's a really well-known thing that has been seen in many different mammal species, that if they're doing poorly, the age of, you know, the first reproduction, it becomes much older.
Thanks. And then we'll do one more. Why is the research being done so vital to the recovery of our endangered Cook Inlet belugas? And why is sharing this information so important? Well, the biggest thing that we're trying to figure out is that we don't have a full understanding of why the population is not recovering. So we know about a lot of potential threats, such as noise in the water, perhaps food limitation, cumulative effects of lots of stressors from shipping and other things that are going on. But until we know more specifically why the population is not recovering, it's hard for us to take management actions to help out. So for example, if it really is that they're not producing enough newborn calves to allow the population to recover, that leads us to looking at things that affect pregnancy and the ability of females to have babies, that kind of thing. So we're just trying to figure out the approximate reasons of why the population is not recovering, so that we can then get to the ultimate causes of what's underneath that. Makes a lot of sense, yeah. And then along this line for information sharing, I'm actually going to ask Jenna this question, or maybe more if you can provide information about Beluga's count update, as we're in a new year and maybe there's some new information about Beluga's count.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So normally we have Beluga's count in September, and our hope is this year we are going to have either an in-person / virtual hybrid, or depending on how things go, maybe a fully in-person event. We're not sure right now. I've been in touch with our planning committee, and people are kind of on the fence, but as a lot of folks know, here in Alaska, we are now open for vaccination. So we're just gonna have to see how things go. But whichever platform we use, whether it's in-person, virtual, or hybrid, we're going to be getting that figured out in the next couple months. And as soon as we have news for folks, we'll be sure to get that posted.
Perfect. Thanks, Jenna. And I'm just going to take it over to Jill real quick and see if she can give us some information on some citizen science efforts that are being done as well.
Sure. Thanks, Jen. So in addition to Beluga's count, there's a couple of other opportunities for members of the public who are interested in being involved in our broader efforts to learn about the belugas and help support their recovery. One of those is a monitoring partnership called the Alaska Beluga Monitoring Partnership. It's a partnership with NOAA, as well as a number of other entities, including Defenders of Wildlife and the Beluga Whale Alliance. And it's an opportunity for people to come out for monitoring sessions where you just monitor at different sites throughout Cook Inlet for 2-hour sessions at a time. Anyone is welcome to join in this effort. We're trying to look at where belugas are throughout different parts of the year. The spring monitoring session, which is actually the first spring monitoring session that the partnership has ever done, starts on the Monday, the 15th, and it'll run through May 15th. And then we have another monitoring session that goes August 15th through November 15th. And if you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to akbmp.org, or just Google Alaska Beluga Monitoring Partnership, and you'll be able to find that website. It has information as well as a virtual training that you can take to then qualify as a volunteer. In addition to that opportunity, if maybe you aren't ready to commit to 2-hour monitoring sessions, but you like to get out and walk around the shores of Cook Inlet, you can, if you see belugas, report those sightings on our Beluga website. That's actually a photo ID project website where the public can report live beluga sightings. So that is cookinletbelugas.com. And then if you see a live or dead stranded beluga, which does happen periodically throughout the inlet, you can report those on that website as well. So those are some different ways that the public can be involved in helping us learn more about the population.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jill, for stepping into this role with NOAA and for highlighting the ways the public can be involved in Cook Inlet beluga research and monitoring. Thank you, Jenna, for the update on the 2021 belugas count. We'll continue to keep our flippers crossed on that one. And then thanks so much, of course, to Paul, too, for giving such an excellent overview of the wide variety of research that's currently happening to support Cook Inlet beluga recovery. So now we'll be transitioning over to the East Coast to welcome our next guest speakers on the presenter lineup, Mystic Aquarium. So joining us from Mystic today, again, are Doctors Tracy Romano, Mystic's Chief Scientist, and then Research Scientist, Dr. Ebru Unal, as well as Marine Mammal Trainer Liz Krukow, and of course, a very special guest, Juno the Beluga Whale. So BWA personally is so excited to be kicking off a brand new partnership with Mystic Aquarium to help expand our scope and connect the research and outreach their accredited aquarium is doing with the work that we do in Cook Inlet locally and globally to support the conservation of beluga whales. So Tracy and Ebru, I will turn it over to you guys now, as well as to Liz and Juno, to introduce yourselves and Mystic's mission to our viewers and help everybody learn more about the valuable research you're doing to support Cook Inlet beluga recovery.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Suzanne. It's great to be here and great to participate in Belugapalooza. Greetings from Mystic, Connecticut. I'm in my office right now at the University of Connecticut, Avery Point, where our aquarium research laboratories are located, but don't worry, we're going to take you to Mystic Aquarium so you can get a first-hand glimpse and meet our whales, meet our trainer, and learn all about how our whales are contributing to beluga research and particularly recovery, especially for Cook Inlet belugas. Mystic Aquarium's mission is rooted in conservation, education, and research. And it's an institution-wide effort that we are dedicated to beluga research and conservation. And again, particularly to those that are endangered. We're learning so much from our whales, and we study the whales in the wild, in the field, but we're learning so much from the animals in our care. And there's so much that we can, there's so much opportunity that the aquarium offers. So for example, when we're working with our whales, we know their history, their health history, we know their ages, we know their diet, we know how much they've eaten. But if we were studying those whales in the wild, we might not have that information. We also know the temperature of the water, the salinity of the water. So we're working in a controlled environment when we study our aquarium whales. And importantly, the animals can be trained to contribute either biological samples and contribute to the research. So today we're going to share with you, we're going to introduce you to our whales and our trainer, Liz Kustos, to give you a firsthand glimpse of how our whales are contributing to beluga research. If there's time after the presentation, we don't want to take Juno's star time away, but if there's time after, we'd love to tell you more about the collaboration with Paul Wade on the skin study that we're doing, as well as answer any questions that you may have on our research. So take it away, Liz and Juno.
Hi, everybody. My name's Liz. I'm one of the trainers here at Mystic Aquarium. I am very fortunate enough to work with a variety of marine mammals. I get to work with seals, sea lions, and of course, beluga whales, which we're super excited to get to tell you about today during our Belugapalooza. But I don't want to take up too much time talking about myself, because let's be real, we want to talk about the stars of our program here. We have our trainer, Jessie. She's been at Mystic Aquarium for quite a while, and she has an amazing relationship with this animal right here, and that is Juno. Juno is 2,500 pounds, and he is 19 years old, and he's our only male here at the aquarium. And he is trained to participate in all of our research behaviors voluntarily. So Jessie, would you like to tell everybody a little bit about how we train our animals here at the aquarium?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So what we use for training for all of our animals, it's operant conditioning, but mainly positive reinforcement. So every single behavior that you will see Juno doing today, every single behavior that he has, including those research behaviors, they're completely voluntary. So we have trained them using that positive reinforcement, which means he does something correct. We give him something that he finds motivating or reinforcing. Most of the time it is all of this fish that he eats, which is a lot of fish. But it also can be some enrichment items or toys. It can be some pats on the tongue. They're very tactile animals, so that tactile can be reinforcing as well. But it's so important because all of these behaviors that are contributing to this research, he does willingly because he's motivated to do them. So it also involves having that great relationship with him. I think we're going to show off a couple of those healthcare behaviors pretty soon as well, which requires a lot of trust and a good relationship. So we'll show you those in a second.
Yeah, so just to tell you a little bit more about our training program here at the aquarium, we are accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. We also are accredited by American Humane, AMMPA, and AMADA. We have very strict standards on our welfare, and we also take great pride in making sure that our animals are able to participate and have choice in their training sessions. So that is very important to us, but a lot of these behaviors are very trust-based. So like Jessie here, she's been working with Juno for quite a while, and it's really important to build those trusting relationships, especially for behaviors like a voluntary blood draw. So right now we're setting Juno up into a position where we could get a voluntary blood draw from him, and that would be easily accessible from his flukes here. So we're gonna get up close and personal and show you his flukes where we would draw that blood from. So you can see on his flukes, those veins. So those are those gray lines in there. And as you can see, Juno is perfectly calm in this position, and we can ask him to lay in that position for a few minutes while we collect that voluntary blood sample. We also have the ability to collect skin samples. Their flukes are a great area where skin kind of flakes off, as you can see. It fluffs all the time. Same with their pec area. We can, or pectoral flippers. We can get a lot of skin samples from those areas because they are constantly fluffing. So we definitely give that to our researchers, and it's a very valuable tool for them, as well as those blood draws. But like you and I, when we go to the doctor, those blood draws are also really important for their husbandry or healthcare, so we can make sure that they are perfectly A-okay. Another behavior that we train them for is voluntary saliva. So we have these tubes here and little cotton buds where I can actually reach into Juno's mouth and get a nice little saliva sample. And those samples our researchers use as well. To do that, all we ask Juno to do is open up his mouth, and I'm just gonna reach on in there and get a nice swab so you can kind of see just how slimy the inside of these whales' mouths can be. So we definitely get a nice saliva sample from that. He's giving me his tongue there. And then we can just cap that off and we can give that to our researchers. And they come about once or twice a month to collect different samples from our whales too, as far as saliva. And then the other really big one is blow. So that is one of our bigger studies that we do here at the aquarium. I feel like we're often collecting blow samples from them, and we can collect their blow samples from their blowhole, which is located on top of their head. And it's really a really nice way that we can get a non-invasive sample from our whales. And it's a great way that we can also check out their respiratory health too. So we're going to show off just how forceful a beluga whale exhale can be. We're going to place this frisbee on top of Juno's blowhole, and then we're going to ask him to breathe. And you can see just how powerful a beluga whale exhale actually is. But they do have really forceful exhale, and we're also going to get a little sample in a petri dish so you can see what that would look like to our researchers. There you go. Cool. Yeah, so you can see Juno's known for being one of our snotty boys. He definitely produces a lot of sample for our researchers to use. And it's a really great way, again, we can constantly assess their health as well. So those are some of the non-invasive research techniques that we can use in-house to do sample collection. But we also have done a lot of external studies in coordination with our researchers to do things like photogrammetry. So that's the next study that we're going to highlight with our whales. So Juno's going to swim underneath of this really long pole. So if you guys want to pan over that way, you can check out that pole. This is really cool. So this is something that Paul was kind of talking about. From afar, you can tell exactly how long a whale is because you get different measurements from them. But we're going to have Juno swim underneath of that pole right now to kind of show off how we would get him to go under it, where we can collect all of those pictures from above. So that would simulate a drone flying above them. So you did an excellent job doing that. We're going to have him go under one more time so you can see what it looks like from our camera here. Beluga whales are a little bit on the slow side, if you guys didn't know that. So there he goes. I'm going to show you my camera here. So we're having Juno swim under there, and we'll collect live pictures that we can then go back and we can get measurements with our whales. So we have a nice measuring tape up here too that we're going to have Juno show off some of those different length measurements that we can do with them. And all of this is voluntary. So you can see he's choosing to participate and swim underneath of that photogrammetry pole. He's also going to lay at the surface of the water here so that we can get a nice measurement on him as well. And this is just a really simple behavior. It's called a layout behavior with our whales. Gotta get that measuring tape. Looks like he wants to roll around a little bit too. Sometimes it takes some finagling. So Juno is a really wide whale. He is close to 226 centimeters wide. So he is, again, weighing close to 2,500 pounds. As you can see, sometimes it takes a duo routine to out with some of these behaviors here too. Okay, sounds good. Maybe not. That's cool too. So again, our animals have choice in their training session. If he decides he'd rather swim around, that's totally fine as well. So we'll just pick up our training session a little bit later. But yeah, so that's some of the different sampling that we do here at the aquarium with our whales. It's just a portion of the training that we do here with them. Research is very important to us. It is our mission here at the aquarium to inspire people to protect our ocean planet through conservation, education, and research. So research is definitely a huge part, but we also want to make sure that our animals are well taken care of. So that means mentally, we're going to train them different enrichment or cognitive behaviors. We also are going to make sure that they're physically okay by teaching them those healthcare behaviors. But beyond that, these animals are great ambassadors. If you pan back over, we're front and center. We are actually on exhibit where everybody can see us doing this research. They can also see us working with our animals. So they're great ambassadors for their species. And we're doing all of these different research behaviors to help support Tracy and Dr. Ibru Nal and all of our researchers to help figure out more about the species so that we can conserve them especially those populations out in the Cook Inlet. And then we're also trying to raise awareness about those animals that might need extra help, like the Cook Inlet population here at our aquarium.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz and Juno, for that fascinating look at what your day-to-day is like. And thank you guys so much for all of the awareness, that Mystic Aquarium and accredited aquariums like Mystic do to help share with people outside of Alaska facts about beluga whales, and especially about our critically endangered Cook Inlet belugas. And of course, in addition to that outreach, the actual research that you guys do and support. And I really love how much fun it seems like both of you, all of you guys seem to be having together, working together. And again, it's just so cool for me and for other people I know for sure who live in Cook Inlet to be able to see and like meet a beluga and really get to see their personality versus just their bright white backs, even though that's really cool to see them in the wild, see what they actually look like and what it's actually like to interact with one. So thank you so much. And just one question I have for Tracy or Liz, whoever would like to, or Ebru, whoever would like to answer it is, oh, nice, nice tail wave, Juno, bye-bye. Is why is it so important that this research is done with belugas and human care versus with belugas in the wild? Tracy, would you like to answer?
Sure, I can answer that. I alluded to it in the beginning. There's so many things we can learn from our animals, and the ability to train them to participate in the research and to give us samples without any apparent stress is really important to move the research forward. So I forgot to mention, most of our research focuses on health of belugas and how environmental and man-made stressors can impact their health. So blood has always been the gold standard, but we're trying to look at non-invasive ways to assess health. So for example, could we collect a blow sample with a drone and actually determine if an animal is pregnant, what their immune system is doing, what their hormones are like, their growth hormones, their metabolic hormones. So utilizing our animals where we can get those blow samples on a regular basis and validate the assays in the laboratory before we can transition to the wild is really important. And so we wouldn't be able to do that otherwise, and we wouldn't be able to get continuous samples to work out all of these validations. And then they also give us a frame of reference. So when we are able to live capture whales to put satellite transmitters on them, like in the Eastern Chukchi Sea or Bristol Bay, and we get blood samples, we have a reference as to the health of those animals. And so we can begin to compare different populations of belugas under different pressures.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited with BWA to work with Mystic more going forward to really, again, to connect and highlight how that work that you guys are doing directly connects to and supports the conservation of belugas like our Cook Inlet belugas in the wild. So thank you guys so much again. And stay tuned if you're viewing this live stream for updates going forward on that, especially this field season as our spring field season in Cook Inlet kicks off. I have one more question for Liz. How do you become a beluga or marine mammal trainer?
Yeah, so I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be a marine mammal trainer. So I started out just by volunteering and interning at local aquariums and even dog shelters. And those simple things ended up turning into internships at aquariums. And then I ended up getting a job at a zoo. And then I ended up getting a job here. So it all kind of leads up to your ultimate end goal. We definitely do prefer a degree in the sciences. So whether that's psychology, because we do as marine mammal trainers have to find what motivates animals, or even biology or ecology, and even marine biology. All of those things can go into becoming a marine mammal trainer. But it is all about that hands-on experience, I would say. You definitely have to develop a good animal sense and also put in a lot of hard work to become a trainer because it is quite competitive.
Great. Thank you so much, and congratulations, and thank you for all the work that you do. I'm going to pass it over to Jen now with Defenders, and as we start here, our wrap up for Belugapalooza today.
Thanks, Suzanne. We're just, we've got about a few minutes left, and we here at Defenders and Beluga Whale Alliance just want to thank all of our presenters for joining us today, and for everyone out on Facebook tuning in. We thank you, and we did have, some questions about how you as an individual can help with this Cook Inlet Beluga work. Following us on, like our Facebook, our Instagram, our social media, lots of times we will put out ways of how you can help, even just thinking yourself, like how much plastic are you using, reducing anything, that can go into the ocean. Just all sorts of things like that, choosing sustainably sourced seafoods, there's so many things. And you can also, we'll provide updates, there's public comments that you can make on things that are coming out. And so we post all of that information on our social media and on our websites. Back to you, Suzanne.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say too. Like, even if you don't live in Alaska, you can support beluga conservation efforts by following all of our organizations, accredited aquariums like Mystic, whose missions are both local, national, and global in reach to encourage the survival of belugas as a species through donations, like Jen mentioned, staying up to date on and submitting public comments about environmental concerns that impact belugas, like climate change and habitat degradation, or simply, as I like to always say, just sending us some positive beluga vibes from wherever you are. So, but if you do live here in the Cook Inlet region and want to participate directly in Cook Inlet beluga research with us, you can do that as a citizen scientist, as Jill with NOAA mentioned. So please visit akbmp.org to learn more about how you can join us COVID consciously this spring, as early as March 15th, in just a few days next week, and celebrate the return of our critically endangered Cook Inlet belugas with us, and even hopefully, flippers crossed, start seeing them. So also, we wanted to invite everybody as part of Belugapalooza who participates in and supports Cook Inlet beluga research efforts, whether you're an individual, an organization, any of our allies, to share today your work and to use hashtags Cook Inlet belugas, Belugapalooza, and Research for Recovery. So share stories and pictures about the research you do to help our critically endangered Cook Inlet belugas survive and thrive. So thank you all to all those individuals, organizations, all of our supporters and partners, and of course our army of citizen scientists out there for helping to conduct this vital research. And yeah, I'll pass it back over to you, Jen. And does anybody else too, any of the presenters, would you guys like to say any final thoughts?
I just wanted to thank you for organizing this. I thought it was very, very good, well planned, and I personally learned a lot as well. Apart from what I've been doing, it's good to know everything else, and it was a great organization. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Ebru, as well, and for continuing the work, very important work you do to support Cook Inlet beluga conservation.
Suzanne, I just
want
to say thank you again. Thanks for letting me talk about our research. And I did see some other questions on the Facebook page about research. I'll try and answer them here in just a couple of minutes.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you for organizing this. And I think saving Cook Inlet belugas is going to take everyone's effort. So please join in on this effort. We have to approach it from everyone's expertise and everyone's passion and dedication. So please jump on board.
Yes, it definitely takes a village to save a species. So All right. Well, thank you all. We'll end here just a few minutes early. Like Paul mentioned, he'll be addressing some of the questions on Facebook. We do have a few minutes though, Ebru, if you would want to chat a little bit more, since you didn't get to talk too much about your research. I think that would be a great use of these last few minutes.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
I am currently working on a project that was funded by NOAA, and it is about investigating the transcriptomics of the beluga skin that is obtained from the Cook Inlet whales. That is a big world, but what it basically means is that I'm looking at the functions of the genes rather than genes itself. The functions is really important because that is what makes a person sick or a whale sick and another one healthy. So the functions of the genes is what I'm looking at. Basically, which genes are turned on and off depending on the situation. So the project is most, of course, focused on the Cook Inlet whales, but for me to understand that they are doing something different, then I am comparing it to a healthy population. The skin samples that is obtained from healthy populations like the Bristol Bay whales, for example, or Eastern Chukchi Sea whales. So that is really important to form as a baseline so that whatever functions are different in their metabolic pathways, then maybe that will be a clue to why their population is declining. So I find this work fascinating, and I will have the results very soon and hopefully publish very soon. So you will know more about it, and so will I. Thank you.
That's excellent. And is that work you're able to undertake, I'm sure, now that their beluga genome has been sequenced?
Absolutely. That was a great help. Because originally I did put together the assembly myself for transcriptome, but having the beluga genome published is really a big help in terms of assigning the functions to the genes that we are seeing expressed differently in between those two populations. And it will be a lot more easier to get an answer.
Great. Well, that is a great way to end, I think, this whole Belugapalooza hour, highlighting the fascinating research that is happening, and we're making strides, hopefully flippers crossed, to seeing these very important belugas that are important to a variety of people survive and recover from the brink of extinction. So thank you all so much again for being here. And just for everybody watching at home, thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday to be here to celebrate belugas with us. This recording should post immediately to Facebook, so you guys can watch it, and please share it with anybody you think might be interested. So thanks so much, and see you soon from the field with our whales.